Chapter 216 to 222. Yama did not care about Uchiha Ryota's swearing. At this time, he was observing Uchiha Ryota's chakra fluctuations with the Tenseigan. Unlike Uchiha Hideki, Ryota does not seem to be able to resist the chakra draining effect of the four-symbol seal. So even under the effects of extreme anger that he felt right now, there were no signs of chakra fluctuations, nor was the Sharingan activated under the emotional stimulation. After observing this for a while, Yama shook his head in disappointment. Similar to Uchiha Hideki, the emotional stimulus of anger is insufficient to awaken the Manjikyu Sharingan or even be able to break free of the restraint effects of the four-symbol seal. With that conclusion, the first stimulation test was over, and Yama again clapped his hands. Clap. Clap. With the sound of clap echoing in the room, the screaming of Uchiha Hideki that could be heard subsided and faded away. Ryota, who was tied to a stone pillar similar to Uchiha Hideki, couldn't help but ask, "What on earth do you want from us? If Sharingan was what you kidnapped us for, then you already have it. Why torture Nii-san?" Yama did not bother to answer Ryota's question, just calmly and silently walked out of the cage, ignoring Ryota. Inside the Uchiha Hideki's prison cage, Uchiha Hideki, who was tied to a pillar, was panting heavily and tried to catch his heavy breathing. His body was full of scars from cut wounds and piercing wounds, some even had blood seeping out of them. There were many bruises that made the skin purple, a few burn marks that made the skin black, and a few of his fingers were also broken or bent in unusual directions, with nails missing in all of them or impaled with metal needles. Overall, he was in a very severe state, clearly indicating the picture that he went through severe torture that is akin to experiencing hell, and Kuroto can guarantee that even the slug Sannin Tsunade would have too much trouble healing him. In front of Uchiha Hideki stood an upright wooden puppet that was one of the many puppets seized during the Third Great Shinobi War when Konoha was in a conflict against Tsunagakure. The puppet itself is not of any extraordinary value or functioning. It cannot use any ninjutsu. The only function it is capable of is to shoot out the pre-stored shuriken and senbon. Since such a puppet does not have any research value, therefore, after being seized by the Konoha, all it was used for was to give experience to the shinobi on how to combat the Tsunagakure puppet brigade. And since Kuroto needed someone or something to keep watch of this dungeon prison in his absence, so he used his Umbu identity to take this puppet from the warehouse. After making it a self-automata with the use of Tenseigan chakra, just like he did with the Kazekage puppet, Kuroto also used the basics of what he learned about the Yin-Yang release to give it some sort of sentience so that it can keep watch of this prison dungeon and the captive Uchiha that will be kept here. Although its combat power is not much, only reaching the level of a chunin, it is still more than enough to perform many tasks, like execution, cleaning, pouring tea, helping in torture, etc. Walking inside this Hideki's cage, Kuroto, who was still wearing the Yama disguise, waved his hand and ordered, "All right, walk back." Following the order, the puppet put away all the torture devices and stepped aside. At this time, Uchiha Hideki glanced at Yama with a weary expression and asked, I felt like. I heard Ryudo, please tell me, it was just my imagination. Yama shook his head indifferently and said, "No, it was not your imagination. He is in the prison cell right next to yours, and he would soon be going through exactly what you have been going for the past few days." Hideki said with a pleading expression, "Please, whatever you want, I will do anything. I will give you everything, please just let him go." Yama thought, the emotional bond between these two brothers is really strong. With this confirmed, I think I can proceed further. Not caring about Hideki's begging, Yama stated, "Unfortunately, that wouldn't be happening." Hideki was silent after hearing Yama's cold words. He understood that at this point, that Yama would not let either of the brothers go. Not to mention the two of them, Hideki has even started to fear that the entire Uchiha clan would fall prey at his hands and be eventually destroyed. And he can't help but sigh at this thought. While Hideki was silent, Yama observed his condition with the Tenseigan, and after confirming that everything was in order, he left the prison cell. Coming to another room, Yama took out two notebooks with Uchiha Hideki and Uchiha Ryota written on the cover. He thought a little bit and started writing in the notebook that contained the report about Uchiha Ryota. Similar to the case with Uchiha Hideki, the anger test failed, solidifying the conjecture that anger is not the most suitable emotion to be used as a stimulus for the awakening of the Manjikyu Sharingan. Additionally, Uchiha Ryota's visual prowess is better compared to Uchiha Hideki, so the probability of awakening Manjikyu Sharingan is higher. Uchiha Ryota is also quite cunning and seems to have noticed that I was intentionally stimulating him. Perhaps he has a degree of understanding on how to awaken Manjikyu Sharingan. After writing up to here, Yama stopped. In the past few days, Yama has figured out that he should not put too much hope in this plan of his, and for that reason, his mentality is quite stable even after repeated failure. Perhaps it is because there is no telling just what is the right amount of stimulation needed to awaken the Manjikyu Sharingan. Therefore, he has also started to study different changes in the Sharingan under different types of emotional stimuli. After closing the notebook, he did not stay much longer in the dungeon prison and returned to his post that was taken over by his shadow clone in his absence. In the blink of an eye, a few more days passed. The sudden disappearance of Uchiha Ryota was another slap in the faces of the Konoha management, and this time, the entire village was stirred up. All Konoha shinobi openly regarded the actions of Amatsukami as an open declaration of war. For this reason, the amount of effort each shinobi was putting to raid and hunt down the black market increased several folds, and strangely enough, many unrelated small organizations that were hiding became unlucky targets. At the same time, a seemingly ridiculous rumor that seemed hard to deny because of the amount of weight it had and seemed justified under careful consideration started to flow out of the rumor mill, and the protagonist of this rumor was none other than Uchiha Shursui. After hearing the rumors, Shursui was in a panic and quickly met up with Kuroto. As soon as Kuroto appeared, Shizuihao had a crying expression exclaimed, "Kuroto-san, we are exposed, what do we do?" These past few days, Kuroto has been busy either with the task that was assigned to Umbu Team 11 or with torturing out the Uchiha brothers. Therefore, he did not pay enough attention to the sudden rumor. Now listening to Shursui mention this, he was stunned and asked, "How do you know you are exposed?" Shursui was a little anxious. It is spread everywhere in the village and everyone knows that Uchiha Shursui is Homosubi of Amatsukami. When Kuroto heard Shursui's words, he felt that such a thing should not be possible and muttered in thought, "No, even if someone figured it out, spreading such a serious matter without any evidence is simply foolish." Shursui said, "But this news has already been spread in the village, what should I do now?" When Kuroto thought of this matter, he felt quite strange about it. If he was Sandaime-sama, and he had evidence that Uchiha Shursui is Homosubi of Amatsukami, then he would have definitely chosen to summon Shursui in secret. And when Shursui arrived, Sandaime cooperates with Danzo and Jiraiya to ambush Shursui, swarm at him together and deal with him effectively without causing much fiasco. After being defeated and captured, whether they want to torture him to obtain intelligence or execute him for the betrayal, both are the options that can be considered. But Uchiha Shursui has not been captured yet and the news has already spread about him being the Homosubi. No matter how you look at it, this should not be how Sandaime-sama works. Because Kuroto doesn't believe that Sandaime-sama would risk releasing such critical intelligence. The reason is very simple. Sarutobi Hiruzen may not have an exact idea of Uchiha Shursui's strength, but he can make a rough estimate based on Shursui's past records. Hypothetically speaking, if Uchiha Shursui really is Homosubi, then how much damage can he do if he goes on a rampage? Taking such a risk to openly release such intelligence is foolish if they really have the evidence about Shursui being Homosubi. So, after thinking about it, Kuroto said with a confident tone, "Don't worry, the village does not have any evidence against you." Listening to Kuroto's confident tone and his reasoning, Shursui also thought about it and felt that's the case, so after calming his initial panic, he spoke in realization, does that mean someone intentionally spread the rumor?" Kuroto pondered over it a little bit and said, "That's the most reasonable explanation, and this means that someone is intentionally targeting you. The other party has no evidence to use against you, in fact, they may not even be sure, but when you think about it that person does not need any evidence to target you. Judging from how the situation has developed, the person who spread the rumor seems to be targeting Shursui, and the approach he used is also very simple, frighten the snake and wait for the snake to jump out by itself. As for how the other party is targeting Shursui to be Homosubi? That's very easy to speculate if you think about it. Officially only two shinobi are known to have the Manjikyu Sharingan, one is Uchiha Shinichi and the other is Uchiha Shursui, so Homosubi has to be either one of the two, and if Uchiha Shinichi is excluded from the possibility then Uchiha Shursui is the only option left. Kuroto can be sure that the other party has no evidence and yet they are targeting Uchiha Shursui, so it was not difficult for him to figure out who that person is. In Konohagakure, the Uchiha clan would not openly throw dirty water on Uchiha Shursui, that is to say, Uchiha Fugaku would have silently confronted Shursui if had his doubts, the same goes for Sandaime-sama. So, the only person left who can target Uchiha Shursui for his Manjikyu Sharingan is Shimura Danzo. This speculation can be easily confirmed based on the fact that aside from the Umbu, only Root subunit has the ability to spread such rumors throughout the village without garnering any attention. and Shimura Danzo has both motivation and ability, so it doesn't take much brainstorming to figure out the source. Thinking so, Kuroto said, now that we have figured this out, think if there was any flaw that you revealed? Shursui thought about it carefully and recalled all the actions he carried out while he played Homusubi. The only flaw right now can be the confrontation of visual prowess I had with the Patriarch, so if Patriarch becomes suspicious and he confronts me, I am afraid he will figure out that it was me. Everyone's chakra has a unique color and nuanced signature to it, and the visual prowess based on chakra is no different in this regard. While acting as Homusubi, Shursui had a brief confrontation with Uchiha Fugaku, so although Shursui's chakra signature and Manjikyu Sharingan shape was not revealed because of the isolation Fuinjutsu used in the mask, the two of them still had a confrontation. Therefore, Uchiha Fugaku must have recorded Homusubi's visual prowess. If Uchiha Fugaku does not doubt Shursui, then everything is well and good. But if Uchiha Fugaku develops doubts about Shursui because of the rumors, and if he confronts Shursui to verify those doubts, then Shursui will be immediately exposed. Thinking so, Kuroto asked, what do you think, will your Patriarch doubt you? Shursui just said, I do not know. That's a bit troublesome, muttered Kuroto. During the scuffle that night, Kuroto and Shursui were non-existent witnesses of each other. If it is proven that Shursui is Homusubi, then it would be difficult for Kuroto to get by, and by then there is a possibility that he will also be exposed. Holding his chin, Kuroto thought, how to solve this trouble. If he wants Shursui to get cleared of all the suspicions, then the best way is to find another person with the Manjikyu Sharingan and let him play as Homusubi, but is that an easy thing? In the entire shinobi world, even if he includes Kakashi and Obito, then there are only 5 people who have the Manjikyu Sharingan. Of these 5, 4 can be excluded unquestionably, and only one option is left. Should I call Shinichi? As soon as this thought came up in his mind, Kuroto shook his head. In their previous communication, Shinichi has notified him that under Pain's order, all the members of Akatsuki have evacuated out of the Land of Fire, and in such a case, it would be difficult for him to sneak into the territory of the Land of Fire. And once Shinichi is involved with Amatsukami, he will no longer be able to continue his undercover mission in Akatsuki. So only one possibility remains. It seems I have to speed up the progress of stimulation tests on Hideki and Ryota. If I can obtain a pair of Manjikyu Sharingan from them, these troubles will be resolved. Although Kuroto does not have much expectation, he also does not have any other option. I guess I will see what I can do about it. After making up his mind, Kuroto said to Shursui, I will see what I can do about it. Remember Shursui, do not admit to anyone that you are Homusubi, no matter how sure they act. Even if your Patriarch confronts you, make sure to not pose any resistance. I may not know about others, but Uchiha Fugaku would not convict you without any solid evidence. As long as you aren't proven guilty, Uchiha clan will protect you with everything they have. Shursui nodded, I understand. Also make sure to not meet Shimura Danzo in this period. If he summons you, there would only be one intention, that is to steal your Manjikyu Sharingan. We may have used Fuinjutsu to make sure that your eyes are destroyed if they are taken out without solving the seal, but that is no reason to let them be destroyed. Shursui said, I will keep that in mind. And lastly, don't be too worried, I have a backup plan, but it will take some time, so make sure to keep your guard up and do not give others any sign that they can use. Shursui nodded, and with that, both of them said goodbye and left. Shursui soon arrived near the Uchiha clan as the Uchiha Patriarch had ordered for his return. Shursui understood that what he is going to be facing now, so taking a deep breath, he hurried forward with a determined look. Whoosh! Just as Shursui was passing through the forest and was about to enter the Uchiha clan grounds, a figure jumped down from the tree and appeared before him. Shursui was not startled by the appearance of this person and asked, Itachi, what are you doing here? Itachi stared at Shursui deeply, and finally asked with a sincere look, Shursui-san, are you Homusubi? Looking at Itachi's sincere expression, although Shursui wanted to say no and deny, but for some reason, he just couldn't and finally nodded with a sigh. Sigh, so much for not admitting. For some reason, Shursui couldn't bring himself to lie to Itachi. It was just that Kuroto-san instructed him to not admit that he is Homusubi to anyone no matter what, so now he felt a bit regretful and worried as to how will Itachi react to this information. Just when Shursui was silent and worried and didn't know what to say, Itachi suddenly bowed deeply towards him. Shursui was surprised and exclaimed, Itachi, what are you? Itachi did not lift his head and said seriously, Shursui-san, you must not admit that you are Homusubi before Otosama. Shursui lifted up Itachi and asked, do you not hate me, Itachi? I have betrayed both the clan and village. Attacked people of the clan, Itachi shook his head. "No, Shisui-san, with the way the situation is developing between the clan and village, something needs to be done or else I am afraid. But still, I have betrayed the clan and that can't be changed," spoke Shisui with a guilty look. "Maybe, but maybe it is better for some to survive even if few have to die for it, rather than all being dead?" And both Uchiha Hideki and Uchiha Ryota were the radicals who would have led the clan to doom, so even if Amatsukami attacked them it was for the sake of the clan. Besides, you prevented Sasuke from being killed, otherwise how could have Sasuke survived? I apologize that Sasuke had to go through that. We needed a witness, but did not expect Sasuke to be the one to find us, so you know, Shisui said. "It's alright, Shisui-san," Itachi said. Shisui was very relieved and the burden he felt was also relieved somewhat. At this moment, Shisui asked, "By the way, Itachi, how did you conclude that I am Homusubi? Was it because of the rumors or something other?" Itachi said, "Before everything, I was doubtful whether you were really defeated by Amatsukami as everyone says, not to mention Kuroto-san was also with you, and you always say that Kuroto-san is stronger than you, so it was hard to believe. And finally, the fact that Sasuke was not killed made me believe it. Speaking of, I am really curious about what kind of organization Amatsukami is." Shisui shook his head helplessly. "For the time being I can't disclose anything about Amatsukami with you. In the first place I, myself am not very much aware of Amatsukami, but you can rest assured that Amatsukami has no ill will towards either the village or the Uchiha clan." "I understand." Itachi nodded. At this time, Shisui said with an earnest look, "Thanks a lot, Itachi, with what you have said. I am relieved, it means a lot to me." Itachi nodded with a smile and said, "Let's go now. If we delay any more, Otosama will get a little impatient out of waiting." Shisui nodded and both of them moved towards the direction of the Uchiha clan and soon arrived at the patriarch's mansion. Walking into the courtyard, both of them arrived before Uchiha Fugaku. Sitting in the hall, Fugaku lifted his head and glanced at Itachi, who was accompanying Shisui, and said in a deep voice, "Itachi, leave, I have something to discuss with Shisui." Itachi did not say anything and after a courteous bow to his father, he silently left the hall. With just the two of them left, Fugaku signaled Shisui to sit. At this time, Fugaku intently stared at Shisui and spoke, "You must have heard the rumors circulating throughout the village?" Shisui nodded lightly, "Yes." Fugaku's gaze was cold and he questioned, "Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Shisui shook his head slightly. Fugaku frowned and activated his Manjikyu Sharingan. Almost at the same moment as Fugaku activated the Manjikyu Sharingan, Shisui felt the world around him changed and he was back to the same elusive world, with white floor and black sky and various kanji symbols floating around. It was again the Inyang prison world. At the same time, Uchiha Fugaku's Manjikyu Sharingan pattern appeared in the sky above his head, and the blacks and whites of the world started invading his soul. Suddenly a cold omnipotent voice sounded, "Uchiha Shisui, I want your explanation, the Uchiha clan wants your explanation." However, Shisui followed Kuroto's instructions and under Uchiha Fugaku's Manjikyu Sharingan ability, he did not pose any resistance and allowed the blacks and whites to continuously invade his body. Slowly but steadily everything about him also started changing as if he was becoming an integral part of this world. Shisui's attitude of posing no resistance surprised Uchiha Fugaku. This was clearly contrary to his expectations. He asked with a frown, "Why do you not resist?" Shisui said, "Why should I resist? I know that patriarch will not hurt me." Hearing Shisui's words, Fugaku was silent and after a bit of consideration he ordered, "From now on, you are to not take a single step out of the clan grounds without my permission, is that clear?" Shisui asked, "But what about my Ambu duties?" Fugaku said in an unquestionable tone, "Your application for being ill will be delivered to Sandame-sama. I believe he will be kind enough to give you a vacation to recover your health." Shisui was helpless and nodded his head. Fugaku released Shisui from the Inyang prison world and said while waving his hand, "All right, you are dismissed." Shisui bowed to Fugaku and quietly left the hall. As soon as Shisui left, Fugaku's face was gloomy. If before he was doubtful, then after this test now, Fugaku was almost sure that Uchiha Shisui is Homusubi. It is because the fact that he has awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan is not known by anyone in the clan or village. But when Fugaku used his Manjikyu technique on Shisui, Shisui was not surprised at the fact that Fugaku has Manjikyu Sharingan, nor was he surprised at Fugaku's dojutsu. This clearly implies that Shisui has already experienced his Manjikyu dojutsu, and the first time Fugaku used Inyang prison world was against the two members of Amatsukami. Therefore, Fugaku can be sure that Shisui is Homusubi, it's just that he has no evidence to prove this. But even evidence aside, Fugaku can't understand how could someone like Shisui choose to join Amatsukami and betray both the clan and the village? If Shisui had chosen the clan over the village, Fugaku would have been happy, but even if Shisui had chosen the village over the clan, Fugaku would have been saddened and a bit angered but not so shocked. However, Shisui chose neither and joined Amatsukami? The other thing he can't figure out is the objective of Amatsukami. Just what do they intend to do? Will a mercenary organization really choose to offend a great shinobi village, such as Konoha? Because if they do so, there will be subsequent consequences, are they not afraid? So, the fact that Amatsukami attacked the Kumobikure delegation and offended Konoha and Kumo, and now that they have kidnapped 2 members of the Uchiha clan, offending Konoha and threatened the Uchiha clan, just what are their intentions of doing this all? No matter how much he thinks about it, Fugaku can't figure it out and has been confused because of all this. The news of Uchiha Shisui taking a temporary leave from the Umbu department because of illness soon reached Shimura Danzo's ears. Danzo obviously understood that this so-called illness is just a lame excuse used by the Uchiha patriarch to keep Uchiha Shisui under house arrest. But this result was out of his estimation. According to what he predicted, after the rumors were fermented in the village, the arrogant Uchiha clan will jump out and try to clarify the matter to prove Shisui's innocence. At that time, in the name of the commander responsible for the annihilation of Amatsukami, he will conduct a complete inquiry and take that chance to take control of the situation and seize away Shisui's Manjikyu Sharingan to get his hands on Koto Amatsukami. He did not expect that as soon as rumors started to have some effect, Uchiha Fugaku chose to put Uchiha Shisui under house arrest, and Danzo had no chance to carry out his plan. Even the Uchiha clan can see through things? Thought Danzo in an impressed manner. Danzo was obviously surprised that the Uchiha clan tried to protect Uchiha Shisui in this manner, even when Shisui was a suspect of being homosubi. Outside Uchiha clan, Might Guy shook his head helplessly and said to Kakashi and Kuroto, "The Uchiha clansmen are still not allowing us to enter in and see Shisui." Kuroto was obviously informed by Shisui about everything that happened and said, "Let him rest, for now, I believe Shisui will contact us when he is ready." Kakashi nodded. The rumors in the village have been quite troubling, so Kakashi was also worried about Shisui. He is not sure whether Shisui is really homosubi, but as the captain of Umbu Team 11, Kakashi had to trust his teammates, and as long as Shisui was in the Uchiha clan, there should be no problem in regards to his safety. With that, the 3 of them left. That night nobody would have expected Uchiha Fugaku to lead the elites of the Konoha military police force to chase after Amatsukami. And now the situation has started to get troublesome. Uchiha Hideki, who was barely alive a few moments ago, now exuded a chilling aura as the tomo in his Sharingan kept spinning rapidly. Yama was observing Hideki's state with his Tenseigan and noticed that the 4-symbol seal could hardly restrain the incredibly strong chakra fluctuations which suddenly exploded like a volcanic eruption. The tomo seems to be only a step away from merging into a different pattern. The 4-symbol seal seems to be losing its effectiveness as many distortions started to appear in the sealing symbols that were eroded for some reason. What? Yama was surprised by this. He didn't expect that the 4-symbol seal would start to erode. Seeing this change, he was reminded of how the 4-symbol seal applied by Yondaime-sama was eroded by the rush of Ryumyaku chakra when Kuroto extracted the Ryumyaku chakra for the artificial tailed beast project. But there was still a difference in the 2 cases. The seal applied to Hideki was also being rearranged at the same time as it was being corroded. He seems to have never heard of such a thing happening. At this time, he noticed that the chakra fluctuations in Hideki were getting more violent and uncontrollable. He took a step back to distance himself and observed all the changes with a look of expectation on his face. He didn't even need the Tenseigan to notice that Hideki's visual prowess was continuously rising. But suddenly something unexpected happened. The chakra fluctuations suddenly stopped and immediately white foam mixed with red traces came out of Hideki's mouth, and his body started twitching and spasming rapidly as if he was under a panic attack. "Shit," muttered Yama, and immediately stepped to give Hideki a high dose of tranquilizer along with a dose of diazepam. The medicine instantly helped in subsiding the twitching and put him in a deep sleep. Looking at Hideki's collapsed state, Yama sighed in disappointment. Powerful emotional stimulation can indeed bring out the true potential hidden within the blood of Uchiha, but not everyone has the necessary willpower and mental fortitude to endure such emotional breakdowns. Not everyone can endure to such an extent, and past a certain level of emotional torture is the point of mental breakdown. Uchiha Hideki was unable to activate the Manjikyu Sharingan even after witnessing the death of his brother and entered a panic attack, implying that this level of emotional torture was past his mental breakdown point, as such his aptitude may not be enough to awaken the Manjikyu Sharingan. Shaking his head helplessly, Yama walked out of this cell while and ordered the wooden puppet, clean up this mess and prepare for the next test in the adjacent prison cell. The Uchiha Ryota that was crucified on the metal cross and killed before Uchiha Hideki was just a low-quality clone he cultivated using Uchiha Ryota's DNA. If not for Hideki's poor condition, broken spirit, and the restraint of the four-symbol seal, Hideki would have undoubtedly figured out that it wasn't his brother Ryota. This is because the clone does not have Ryota's chakra trace, nor does it has the Sharingan. Dojutsu requires mental power to activate the eyes, so even if Kuroto could perfectly clone Uchiha Ryota's body, the clone would not be able to use Sharingan. This is the weakness of the current cloning technology. Coming to his study room, Kuroto took off his Yama mask and recorded all the details of the test conducted on Uchiha Hideki, as well as the result. Being done with this, he glanced at the Uchiha Hideki clone which was crucified. The two clones he cultivated using Uchiha Hideki and Uchiha Ryota DNA were actually cultivated using a high amount of nutrient solution without even minding the cost, but strangely enough, a problem occurred and the two clones he obtained were of very low quality. They can even be considered as defective by Kuroto's standards. Kuroto understands that Uchiha Ryota is more cunning than his brother, therefore, he decided to test this method firstly on Uchiha Hideki. The test went quite smoothly and effectively if not for the last failure because of Uchiha Hideki's mental breakdown that resulted in overall failure. Now Kuroto has to pin his hopes on Uchiha Ryota, and considering that Uchiha Ryota's mental fortitude is much higher than his elder brother's, so the possibility of success is also higher. After putting on the Yama mask, he arrived in front of Uchiha Hideki clone and used a kunai to carve out various wounds and cuts, which would let Ryota see just how much torture Uchiha Hideki has borne since he was kidnapped. It only took him about half an hour to do this. Although all these wounds appeared to be freshly inflicted, it isn't anything strange. This is because of the presence of Iryo ninjutsu. It is common to heal the wounds and injuries of the prisoners to carry out repeated torture. But even after he was done with all this, he still felt that something was amiss about Uchiha Hideki's clone, but he can't seem to figure it out. Uchiha Ryota is too cunning, therefore, Kuroto can't help but be too cautious about this. For this reason, he didn't rush it and carefully thought and tried to figure out what made him feel as such. Suddenly his gaze landed upon the clone's closed eyes and he finally realized what was amiss. Kuroto immediately said to the wooden puppet, "Gouge out his eyes too." The wooden puppet followed his command and dug out the clone's eyes. Now all that was left in the eye sockets were a pair of bloody eye sockets, which increased the visual impact and the convincing power of this clone. Ryota, maybe cunning, is still an Uchiha after all. It is in the nature of an Uchiha to be affected by their emotions. Seeing that his brother's Sharingan has been dug out, he would obviously go out of his mind, as such his judgment power will also drop. After nodding to himself that everything was in order, Kuroto muttered, "Let's see if this results in a success or another failure." With that, he walked out of his study and proceeded to the prison cell Uchiha Ryota is kept in. As soon as Yama stepped into the cell that Uchiha Ryota was detained in, he felt a vicious glare, that particular look filled with rage and hatred for him, and couldn't wait to pounce on him and rip him apart. Yama naturally did not care about this, and said casually, "You seem to be in good spirits today?" Ryota said, "I just heard Hidekini's shouts. I have been confused. No matter what your objective is, it doesn't make any sense for you to torture the two of us for so long. No matter what you want, only disappointment is what you will get." When speaking this sentence, Uchiha Ryota actually revealed that he is faintly aware of why Yama was torturing them. Yama faked a long silence and then said, "You are right. I have long grown impatient." Ryota snorted, "And that's the only thing you will get." Ignoring Ryota's words, Yama clapped his hands. Followed by the command, the wooden puppet brought the crucified clone body of Uchiha Hideki inside the prison cell. As soon as he saw his brother, Ryota's gaze was directed towards the two empty bloody eye sockets. Instantly Ryota's mood changed into a deep scowl, veins on his temple bulged, and his face red with anger and resentment. As Yama expected, because of the long-term torture Ryota's spirit has already weakened, coupled with the fact that the eyes of Uchiha Hideki were gouged out leaving two bloody holes, and looking at all the injuries that Uchiha Hideki has, Ryota was unable to calm down and therefore couldn't distinguish whether the person before his eyes was really his brother or not. Yama spoke with a Cheshire grin, now Ryota-kun, no need to be so angry. I just gouged out your brother's eyes, and turned him into a vegetative state. Is that really something to get angry over? Ryota gritted his teeth with all his might that some cracks appeared in his upper molar. He wanted to rip apart this bastard and tear him into pieces for treating his brother as such and using the Uchiha as the Sharingan farm, but controlling his anger with a sigh. Ryota spoke with a bitter expression. You are right, presumably you are going to dig out my Sharingan too. After all, that was your goal from the beginning, right? So stop talking nonsense and just do it already. After leaving this sentence, Ryota's expression turned indifferent, and his cloudy eyes also became clear, as if he has already accepted his fate. It seemed as if Ryota's will to struggle was already broken. Yama frowned and he suddenly realized that he went a little too far in torturing out these Uchiha brothers. It appears that he has yet to learn the art of emotional torture and it would take him some time to reach the level of Uchiha Madara and Uchiha Obito. As the person responsible for doing the dirty work of the Uchiha clan, Uchiha Ryota must have had a lot of encounters with death, and coupled with the torture he experienced, death seems a relief for him. Uchiha Ryota should have long understood that there is no way for him and his brother to survive out of this, so he seems to have already prepared himself to meet his brother in the Pure Land. And since Ryota has completed such psychological preparation, so even if Yama kills Hideki in front of him, there would be little impact on his emotions. Realizing this, Yama understood that even if he has made all the preparation, these would still not be enough to stimulate Ryota into awakening Manjikyu Sharingan. But now that he has already brought the crucified clone here, it wouldn't be a good idea to stop this test midway. So he held Uchiha Hideki by the hair, dragged him closer to Uchiha Ryota, and asked, "What do you think I should do with this pathetic excuse of a shinobi?" There was a short struggle in Ryota's eyes, but he quickly recovered his indifferent look. His gaze moved from his brother to Yama, and he did not say anything more. Yama knew that it was pointless, but he still had to continue with the act. So bringing out a kunai, he lunged it forward and pierced through Hideki's throat. Splash. Instantly, Hideki's blood splashed on Ryota's face, and everything was silent for a moment. The silence was not eerie, only saddening. From beginning to end, Ryota did not even blink as his brother died right before his very eyes. The blood even entered his eyes, giving off a horrifying look, yet no rage, no struggle, and no anger appeared on his face. The black eyes stained with red blood was hiding a bottomless hatred within them, but the hatred wasn't going to be unleashed. The expressionless cold eyes stared at Yama with an indifferent look, as if to burn the outline of Yama in his mind and imprint it into his soul. All this while, Yama was observing Ryota's changes with the Tenseigan. Through careful observation, he was able to see that Ryota's chakra rioted violently for a short duration as Hideki's blood splashed on his face, but it soon subsided and returned to normal. And it was obviously not enough for Ryota to awaken Manjikyu Sharingan. Really failed. Although unmoved because he already expected as such, he still sighed silently. Uchiha Ryota has been repeatedly exceeding Yama's expectations. Although this makes him uncomfortable that a test subject is acting out of his hands, Yama still can't help but admire Ryota. Because he knows that if he was to go through the same torture that Ryota experienced, then he might have already collapsed, similar to Hideki. Just as Yama recollected his thoughts and completely accepted the failure, suddenly he noticed something. It was an extremely subtle detail. He noticed an extremely small hole in the four-symbol seal he has imposed on Ryota. Understanding what that implied, Yama thought, that hole is not accidental or some mistake on my part, but it seems to have been created by Ryota by extremely subtle chakra control. Ryota should be unable to use his chakra, but he seems to have managed to extract some amount of it and has been using it to corrode the seal, slowly and secretly. This means that Ryota has not given up on himself as he showed, and is still trying to save himself if possible. As soon as he realized this, a grin appeared on his face. For a moment Yama thought to expose that he has seen through Ryota's plan, but after a bit of consideration, he changed his mind and decided to not say anything. Leaving Ryota to continue with what he is doing, Yama signaled the wooden puppet to take away Hideki's corpse from Ryota's prison cell, and then he also left the cell. Coming to his study, he removed the Yama mask and then started recording the detail of the test. Sadness test results in a failure for both Uchiha Hideki and Uchiha Ryota. Uchiha Ryota already has the psychological preparation for death, so the experiment was a total failure. Uchiha Hideki doesn't seem to have the necessary aptitude to awaken Manjikyu Sharingan, therefore, all experiments and tests will be suspended on him. After writing up to here, Kuroto turned the page of the notebook and wrote, "Despair test," while the corners of his lips curved into an evil grin. When he discovered that Uchiha Ryota has yet to completely give up, and was still trying and struggling to break out of here and save himself, the outline of a master plan started forming in Kuroto's mind. Kuroto can be sure that this plan will be perfect and definitely yield a pair of Manjikyu Sharingan. Closing the notebook, Kuroto put it on the shelf and walked out of his study. For one to experience despair, he must first have hope in his heart, muttered Kuroto with an evil grin. Uchiha Ryota's prison cell. Looking at his brother's dead body that was dragged out of the cell, Ryota's face distorted and rage filled his face. The scare of his eyes was bloodshot red and 3 tomo rapidly spinning in the scarlet copy wheel. Ryota did not cry, because there was no point in it, but he swore in his heart, "Nisan, I will definitely avenge your death." 1 week later. These days Kuroto would casually go to the prison dungeon from time to time to check up on Ryota's progress in cracking the seal and irritate him sometimes. Of course, he did not stop the torture as that can make Ryota suspicious. Overall, Kuroto was able to conclude that Ryota was indeed breaking the seal to escape. It's just that he was being too careful and his progress was too slow for Kuroto's taste. With the speed at which Ryota was cracking the seal, it will take at least 2 to 3 months for him to successfully break free. Kuroto obviously can't afford to wait for so long, because there is no telling how the situation will change during this period, so he can't let Ryota stall so much time. After mulling over a little, Kuroto had an idea. Currently, he was inside Ryota's prison cell, and after delivering the daily dose of torture he said to the wooden puppet, "I have to go on a mission and I wouldn't be coming for the next 10 days, so in the meantime, you have to keep watch over him and you don't need to give him any nutrition, just water is enough." All while Kuroto spoke this, Ryota didn't seem to be paying any attention, his eyes were currently unfocused as if he was in a tranced state, there was no reaction on his face and he did not even bat his eyelids. But Kuroto can confirm that this is just Ryota's facade because he has already noticed that as soon as his words were finished, the frequency of Ryota's heartbeat increased slightly. Kuroto pretended to not notice this change and muttered, "I have already got bored of this torture game, so I have decided that after I return from completing the mission, I will put him out of his misery, that way we wouldn't have to bother about him anymore and I will dispose of him." There was again a slight increase in the frequency of Ryota's heartbeat but it soon returned to normal. Kuroto ignored the change and left the prison cell, calmly. As soon as the gate of the prison cell was closed, Ryota's opened his eyes and his murderous energy started leaking unconsciously. 10 days Back to his study room, Kuroto sat on a chair and reviewed his plan, repeatedly confirmed that there were no loopholes and after he was sure about this, he nodded and soon started the preparations. For the final, despair test 10 days later, the entire dungeon prison will be a test site, so he must arrange all the props now. Regardless of whether the final test results in a success or failure, this dungeon prison will be abandoned after the test, therefore, Kuroto has to make sure to clean up all the traces that might point towards him through the grapevine. After completing what he had to do, Kuroto left the dungeon prison and came to his secret laboratory in the Death Forest. Coming to Cell Cultivation Lab, Kuroto stopped before the large nutrition tanks. 2 clones were floating in these nutrition tanks, but they are not the clones he planned to use for the fusion in Chimera technique. Rather they were simple clones he cultivated using DNA extracted from his own cells. Checking all the data displayed, Kuroto analyzed the parameters of the 2 clones and calculated all the next steps to be taken. With the technical means he currently has access to, the cultivation of a simple low-quality clone takes at least half a month. The 2 clones floating in the nutrition tank were already bred a week ago, so counting the time, they should be successfully completed in about a week for the last stimulation test, that is if nothing unexpected happens. With everything proceeding according to the predetermined plan, Kuroto did not waste time anymore and sneaked back to the village. During this week, the hunting operation against Amatsukami has come to a sudden halt. This is because no matter how much manpower or material resources are used, there has been no successful result. The so-called bounty-mean organization named Amatsukami seems to have never existed at all. This has made more and more people feel that something is wrong. All signs point that Amatsukami has not had any substantial interaction with any underground organization other than their hostile relationship with Akatsuki. And considering that the members of Amatsukami have not made any appearance since the Uchiha Ryota went missing, a strange reputation about Amatsukami has started to permeate. Amatsukami seems to suddenly appear out of nowhere in the shinobi world and then suddenly disappear, making people feel unpredictable. And precisely because of the repeated failures, people have started to take the rumors about Uchiha Shursui being Homasubi seriously. Everyone can't help but make secret speculations. Among the Uchiha shinobi, Uchiha Shursui is the only one who is officially known to have the Manjikyu Sharingan, so the possibility that the rumors are correct is very high. And if it is true, does that mean Amatsukami is hidden in Konoha? All these things have prompted Sandaime not to be able to sit by any longer, and he must take corresponding steps. Soon, Hyuga Kuroto received a personal summons under Hokage's orders. Coming to the Hokage office, Kuroto frowned slightly as he looked at the people present in the room. At this time, not only Sandaime-sama, but even the three elder advisors, the patriarch of Hyuga clan, Hyuga Hayashi, as well as the toad Sannin Jiraiya, were present in the Hokage office. What surprised Kuroto, even more, was the presence of a small elder toad who stood on the table next to Jiraiya. The toad was green in color with white hair, white beard, and white eyebrows, wearing a brown cloak. This toad was obviously not simple, and Kuroto recognized him as Fukasaku, one of the two great toad sage from Mount Myaboku. Even someone like him was called to be present during the interrogation? Thought Kuroto in surprise. Calming down himself, he kneeled before Sandaime-sama and spoke. Eagle of Team 11 reporting, Hokage-sama. Sarutobi Hiruzen put down the tobacco pipe, which has become more and more inseparable these days, and said, "There are some questions, you have to answer them truthfully." Kuroto, who was already removed his Eagle Umbu mask, nodded. "Yes, Hokage-sama, I will answer every question to the best of my ability." Sandaime said, "Report everything about the events on the night when the Kumogakure delegation was attacked. How did you and Uchiha Shursui encounter the enemy, the entire battle process, including every other detail?" Kuroto and Shursui have already discussed everything repeatedly, so Kuroto did not need to think too much and recounted the fabricated details. After listening to all the explanations, everyone in the Hokage office was thinking and trying to find loopholes in Kuroto's words. Hyuga Hayashi was staring at Kuroto with a little worry in his eyes. So far, only Kuroto, Shursui, Hayashi, and some members of the Hyuga clan are actually aware of what transpired in the Hyuga territory that led to Watanabe's death. Therefore, Hayashi was worried that the suspicion on Uchiha Shursui might also drag Kuroto into this mess. If you liked the content, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. I'll stay here until next time.